What is up, Scream Team? Zach Cherry here, and in this video, I'm gonna give you my full spoiler breakdown of the new Scream movie. That will include everything from my personal opinions on the motive and reveal of Ghostface, as well as all of the hidden Easter eggs along the way. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel to keep up with all the horror movie content, and do me a favor by tossing this video a thumbs up and letting me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are on the new Scream movie. Let's get into it. The movie begins in Woodsboro, where we're introduced to Tara Carpenter, who is home alone as her mother is out of town on business. She's making plans over text with her girlfriend Amber to come over later, but is interrupted when the landline rings. Of course, this is Ghostface calling, who forces Tara into a game of horror movie trivia when it's revealed that they've been the one texting her from Amber's phone and are threatening to kill Amber if Tara refuses to play. Tara tries to leave the house to get to Amber, but is attacked by Ghostface, who is waiting at the front door, and after disabling the smartphone home security system, is able to sneak in through another part of the house, where they proceed to stab Tara repeatedly as the sound of police sirens approach in the distance. So right off the bat, I want to say that this is the best opening scene since Scream 2. I think that it's really elevated by the fact that Roger L. Jackson is actually really prevalent in this scene. We get a lot more Ghostface talking on the phone than we have in any of the movies since the original. This probably might be the most since the original. And it's just really nice to hear him on the phone doing something other than just like jumping right to the threats. That's the thing here. Like, he starts the phone off like we did in the original movie as, you know, completely innocent, just an innocuous phone call, and then slowly progresses to the threatening and menacing voice that we all know and love. Playing off against that, we also have Jenna Ortega as Tara Carpenter, who does a phenomenal job. She's probably the best performance in this movie. And just having the two of them go at it together made for like a really fresh and original scene. There are a lot of Easter eggs inserted into this, as well as the voice on the phone refers to themselves as Charlie, who's a friend of Tara's mother. And, you know, obviously that's probably referring to Charlie from Scream 4. But we also get some references to the Stab franchise as Ghostface starts to trivia Tara, and we finally get to see who plays the other characters in the movies, as we haven't really known this from before. So other than the cast that we've already known about, which is Tori Spelling as Sidney, David Schwimmer as Dewey, Luke Wilson as Billy, and Heather Graham as Casey, we're also given a reference to the fact that Jennifer Jolie from Scream 3 did play Gale Weathers in the first Stab movie, and we're also shown that Tatum was played by Alicia Silverstone, who was referenced in the first movie.
Oh really, Alicia?
And Stu was played by Vince Vaughn, who was also Norman Bates in the remake of Psycho. I also want to nitpick on a little inconsistency here, and there's going to be a lot of nitpicks in this video, so don't think that that colors my perception of this movie at all, because I do really love this movie. But Ghostface trivias Tara about the Stab movies, specifically who the main character was, and she rightfully guesses Sidney Prescott, who Ghostface says was an easy answer because Sidney appeared in every single one of the Stab movies except for the last one, which would have been Stab 8. And obviously we know that this is not true because at the beginning of Scream 4, Jenny states that Sidney was only a character in the first 3 Stab movies.
But then she threatened to sue them if they used her story, so then they just started making stuff up.
We're also introduced to the advent of smart home technology with the locking of the doors using the cell phone. And, you know, that's very clever. I like the way that it was used here, but I think it's one of those things that might not age very well. I feel like anytime you take like present day technology and insert it into a movie, when you watch that movie, you know, 10 or 20 years later, it just feels weird. After the title card, we're taken to Modesto, California, where Tara's sister Sam is sitting outside of a bowling alley at which she works. She takes some prescription medication before she's joined by her boyfriend Richie, who also works with her. After some light flirting, Sam receives a text message from Wes Hicks, one of Tara's friends and the son of Deputy Judy Hicks, who appeared in Scream 4. Sam calls Wes, where he tells her that Tara was attacked by Ghostface but survived the incident, and recommends that she should come back to Woodsboro. Without hesitation, Sam decides she needs to be with her sister, to which Richie insists he comes along with. There's not a whole lot to say about this scene in particular since we're still being introduced to all these characters, but what is interesting is that this is the first instance in any of the Scream movies where the opening scene victim is not actually killed. So this is kind of like the start of like where the movie subverts our expectations and kind of its setup, where the first 4 Scream movies followed a very specific template, and now we're kind of diverging from that with everything going forward. So we'll see that throughout the movie, there's a lot of instances where we're not going to do, what we expect with the hitting the specific beats. Obviously, Richie is one of the two killers in this movie, and we're introduced to him here. And I just kind of wanted to point out the parallels between Scream 1, because the first scene after the opening scene, we're introduced to Sidney and her boyfriend Billy. But I think the biggest difference between Sam and Richie and Sidney and Billy is that Sam and Richie have a much more open relationship sexually. And that's kind of evident when, she starts joking about his boner pills. And he says that you are my boner pill. Back in Woodsboro, we're introduced to Wes, Amber, twins Mindy and Chad's girlfriend Liv. We find out that school is being canceled for public safety concerns, and that Wes's mom, who is now the sheriff, has been interviewing students. Liv notices that her ex-boyfriend Vince is creeping around. She says that he worked with her and Tara the previous summer, and that he's been stalking her on Instagram and posting weird things. As Chad postures himself to go confront him, Amber notices bruises on his arm, and points out that Tara fought back hard against Ghostface. Chad rebuffs the accusation, however, as he says he got them from football practice. Vince ends up leaving anyway, and Wes receives a text from Tara at the hospital saying she's awake. The group decides to go visit her, except for Liv, who suspiciously stays behind. This might be the only scene in the movie that we do see in all of the other movies, and that's kind of like introducing the suspects, or like the friend group. And I want to say that with these guys in particular, I really like their chemistry. I know a lot of people are saying that this is not a great cast. I disagree. I think this scene is important in particular because it is setting up a lot of things that will come into play later, like a lot of Chekov's guns. In particular, we have the whole bit with Chad and Liv in regards to him wanting her to accept his GPS Find Me app that obviously comes into play later. And then there's also the element of the killer possibly having bruises because Tara fought back against her attacker. There are also some red herrings that don't really go anywhere, and this might just be intentional, or also the fact that, scenes might have gotten deleted, because it's left to seem a little suspicious that Liv would stay behind in the park, and we never actually get any explanation to this later on. As Sam and Richie drive into Woodsboro, Richie admits to having never seen Stab or any of its sequels. Sam explains the history of the movies and their connection to the town, which Richie seems to respond to with an unusual amount of levity. He gets serious though when he asks Sam if she has any idea why someone wearing a Ghostface mask would want to kill her sister, to which she says she doesn't know, but seems to be hiding something. This scene obviously serves to let us know that Sam knows more than she's letting on, but it also references the events in Scream 4, as Sam mentions that the last time there was a Ghostface attack was in 2011, so we at least know that the events of the past movies do exist in this movie. And although this scene does seem like a little bit expository, it does serve a greater purpose in the grand scheme of the movie, because this is where we really start to see Richie's deceit very early on, because, from the moment that we meet him until the moment that he's revealed as the killer, there's all these instances of him just behaving very strangely, or just saying things that, are kind of out of character for what you'd expect. And I like that. I think it's like, putting those subtle clues in there and planting the seeds so it does make sense in the end. Sam and Richie arrive in Tara's hospital room, where Sam is reacquainted with Wes, Chad, and Mindy, who we find out she used to babysit when they were younger. Amber, who is also there, appears to be standoffish with Sam. Everybody clears out of Tara's room except for Sam, where there appears to be some awkwardness between the two sisters. Nevertheless, Sam declares she's going to sleep in the room with her tonight. So going back to what I was saying earlier with the idea that the person who was the killer would have bruises from fighting against Tara, it's in the scene that we can clearly see for the first time that Amber does have a very prominent bruise on her right collarbone. In the scene earlier, we didn't see it because she had her hair covering it, but this is the first instance where we're clued into the fact that she is the other killer. And she hides this really quickly because she is crossing her arms for most of these scenes, and she's wearing a jacket, so it just kind of like closes it and covers up her collarbone. And I will eventually get to my opinion on what I think of these two killers, but what I like right off the bat here is that already we have interactions between the two characters before we even know that they're the killers. And that's something that we didn't really get in the previous movies, other than Scream 1. In Scream 2, Mickey and Debbie Salt, or Mrs. Loomis, did not have any interactions until the end scene. Scream 3 was obviously just Roman. And Scream 4, even though like Jill and Charlie were in the same friend group, there was really never any instance where whether the two of them talked to one another. So right off the bat, it's fun to go back and watch this and just see Richie introduce himself to Amber, knowing that they already know each other and that they're the killers. Liv rejoins the group at a local bar later, where she asks everyone what Sam is like. They all have a really high opinion of her, except for Amber, who explains that Sam's father left them when she was 13 and Tara was 8. This caused Sam to become a delinquent throughout her teen years, where she eventually left home when she was 18 and hasn't kept in touch with Tara or her mother since. Wes tells Amber she's being too overprotective of Tara, to which Mindy points out that Wes has motive for attacking Tara, as they all know he has an unrequited crush on her. Mindy explains that they're all suspects anyway, except for maybe Liv, who she says is too boring to be a psycho. Just then, Vince shows up where he propositions Liv in front of the group, only for Chad to get confrontational, resulting in them all getting kicked out. We then follow Vince into the back alley, where somebody gets into his car while he's busy urinating on the side of the building. He's startled by the car's ignition and approaches the vehicle while the perpetrator revs the engine and blinds him with the high beams. Vince finds the car empty and doesn't notice Ghostface standing off to the side, who quickly stabs him in the neck and watches him bleed out on the ground as he becomes the first kill of the movie. I think that this scene shows us like more great dynamic between the cast here, but what I don't like is that it kind of acts as an exposition dump, because you have Amber kind of monologuing this history between Sam and Tara, which just seems like one of those unnatural things that the characters probably already know and wouldn't be talking about. If you just compared like this exposition here to in Scream 1, where there's this whole backstory with Maureen Prescott's murder, we don't really get any scene in that movie where the whole story is just kind of dumped in front of us all at once and we have to sit there and listen to it. It sort of just like organically comes about from little instances, like Tatum when she's like, oh, this is like the worst crime we've seen in years, even worse than, or you know, next up we're interviewing Sidney Prescott, she was the daughter of, like, it's probably not until like maybe the 40-minute mark in Scream 1 where we actually like finally get all the pieces of the Maureen Prescott and like Cotton Weary backstory all presented to us. So here it just feels like we're slowing the movie down to talk about things that, you know, probably could have come about more organically in the process of the story. One thing that I'm kind of confused on with this movie is what Amber and Tara's relationship is to each other. Because initially, like in the character breakdowns that we got for the movie before it came out, and even like earlier drafts of the script, it clearly states that the two characters are girlfriends. So it's not really made entirely specific. I also just wanted to mention Kyle Gallner as well, because I feel like he was completely underused in this role. Like he barely had a scene and a half, and just like to get someone like him to play this like nothing role just seemed like a bit of a waste. I did like that they played Red Right Hand during that scene. That was a really cool moment. Sam wakes up at the hospital after having fallen asleep next to Tara. Richie is also in the room, where he's been up this entire time watching Stab on Netflix in order to be prepared. Sam wanders off to the hospital break room to take her medication, where she has a hallucination of Billy Loomis. She doesn't seem too fazed by it, however, as it seems as though she gets them quite frequently. He taunts her for trying to run away from who she is and asks when she's going to tell Tara why this is all happening. Just then, Sam receives a call from Amber's phone, but answers it to find the voice of Ghostface instead, who tells her that they know her family secret and that it was part of their plan to lure her back to Woodsboro. Sam goads the caller into coming for her, only to have Ghostface appear from behind a door and attack her. She runs into the hallway where she alerts the police, but when they go back to check the room, Ghostface is gone. I have to admit, I'm a little torn on the whole Billy Loomis hallucination thing, because I found this to be really cringy, and I still kind of do. I think that Skeet Ulrich didn't have to be in this movie. Like, they could have removed that whole hallucination aspect altogether. But then I kind of remembered Scream 3, because we did have Maureen Prescott's ghost, or, you know, the visions that Sidney had of her. And, you know, I like that. That really played in well to the movie. But I think that, you know, a problem that we have here, and I'll get more into it after, is that that was like really set up with what the killer's motive and end goal was in terms of like this movie and Scream 3, where they were planning on framing the main character. So like in this case, Sam, Roman's plan in Scream 3 was to make Sidney appear like she was crazy. So it kind of felt like unnecessary fat that could have been trimmed out of the movie. But I guess like in terms of like fan service, like a lot of people would probably be really excited to see Billy come back. So I understand that. Judy Hicks arrives at the hospital to get a report on the incident and questions why the call came from Amber's number. Amber points out that the killer had already cloned her cell phone before when they attacked Tara, but that doesn't stop Richie from accusing her of being the killer, and Amber questions Richie's alibi as well. Judy assures Sam that they're increasing hospital security and moving Tara to a private floor, but Sam criticizes her for being ill-prepared. Not taking too kindly to Sam or her troubled history in Woodsboro, Judy suggests that she and Richie leave town first thing in the morning, as her presence is unwelcome. Judy leaves, and Sam asks Richie and Amber to give her and Tara some privacy, where she tells Tara that the reason she became distant and left town was because she found out from her mother's diary that her real father was Billy Loomis. Billy had impregnated their mother when they were in high school, which she told her boyfriend was his child, leading to the two of them getting married. Sam confronted her parents about the revelation, which her father didn't know about, causing him to abandon the family and driving a wedge between her and her mother. Sam thinks that her connection to Billy is the reason why Tara was attacked, but Tara becomes angry at Sam for never telling her the truth and having left for 5 years. Tara kicks Sam out of her room, where she runs into Richie, who overheard the entire conversation. Despite being freaked out, he comforts and assures her that he's staying with her no matter what. This is another scene where we get to see Amber's bruise again, so just letting us know that she was the attacker in that first scene. But we also get more interactions between the killers. And what's interesting here is that these two are like openly accusing each other of being the killer. In terms of the interactions between Judy, Hicks, and Sam, this is what I was saying about just backstory coming about more organically, because in terms of like Judy telling Sam that she remembers her and just like all the trouble that they had to deal with when she was a delinquent teenager and that she should leave town as soon as possible, that's a better way of letting us know the kind of character that Sam was and, you know, who she's become over these past 5 years that she's been absent. So that's how you should tell a backstory. And that kind of brings me into the part of the movie where Sam basically just like gives us the biggest exposition dump of letting us know that she is Billy Loomis's daughter. And I will say that I'm glad that they didn't stretch this reveal out until the end of the movie, because I think that after the Billy hallucination, it was pretty clear what direction that they were going in. But another thing that I wanted to talk about, because I have seen a lot of criticism of Melissa Barrera's performance as Sam, especially in terms of like the more emotional scenes like this one. And I mean, I can't really comment on that. I don't know her as an actor. I haven't seen her in other things. So I think that, you know, maybe this was just a case of the actual screenplay of this being another scene that probably could have been more show, don't tell, because I mean, like any long monologue where you have to like recall finding a journal or diary and, you know, finding out that someone was not your dad, like that's gonna be a hard scene to read, and I don't envy any actor for having to do that. But again, I think that comes down to the writing, and this could have been a scene that was, you know, figured into the movie in a more organic way. Wanting to consult with a Woodsboro murders expert, Sam and Richie go visit a now retired Dewey, who lives in a trailer. Dewey appears to be in rough shape and is no longer with Gale, as he's now seen watching her on a morning news program. He's reluctant to talk with Sam and Richie, but lets them come in when she tells him that she's the daughter of Billy Loomis. Dewey immediately throws shade on Richie, saying that the love interest can never be trusted, but tells Sam that she should be looking at her sister's friend group in order to find the killer. Sam asks Dewey to help her, but he outright refuses and kicks them out of the trailer. After they leave, Dewey calls Sidney, who now appears to be married to Mark Kincaid from Scream 3 and has at least 3 kids. Dewey tells her that Ghostface is back and warns her to stay away from Woodsboro for her own protection, but Sidney makes him change his mind about helping Sam when she says that she's glad he's there to protect her. Dewey also sends Gale a text message, as he doesn't have the courage to talk to her over the phone. First of all, I want to say that Dewey is the MVP here. I mean, maybe not of the entire cast, but at least of the legacy characters coming back. And I really like that their introduction into the story felt really appropriate. Like, it didn't seem forced. We also don't get like the full story of why Dewey and Gale aren't together right off the bat. So it leaves a little bit more to anticipate going into the movie as we wait for Gale to come into the picture. We've seen pretty much Dewey as this consistent figure throughout the first 4 movies. So, you know, this is the first time we really get to see him falling on hard times. And it's funny because like throughout all of this strife, he has this air of positivity to him. Like, you know, he still finds the joy in watching Gale's morning show. And I think that's really sweet. It lets us know that, like, despite the fact that, you know, he's been through the ringer, he's still the same person inside. And you know, I think that that was the right option to go with this character. With seeing Sidney again, like, I think that, you know, Sidney is one of my favorite final girls. And just in terms of her story throughout the entire franchise, this is exactly where I'd expect her to be in life. Like, the events of the 4 movies before that and this 5th movie now do not define who she is as a person. Like, they're very important events in her life, but, you know, she lives outside of this. Like, she has an entire network outside of just Gale and Dewey and fighting Ghostface killers. And we see that in the fact that she picks up the phone and she hasn't spoken to Dewey in a long time. You know, she's married, she has kids. And another thing, and this is something that I kind of cringed at, maybe it's just me, but just the fact that we find out that she's married to and has children with Mark. And it's funny because in my video where I ranked all the 31 characters, I actually predicted that this was going to happen. I didn't put it in the video, I removed it, and I'll play it for you right now. Oh my God, I just thought of something that would be awful, and I hope they don't do it if we find out in the new movie that Sidney is with him. So seeing that, like, come to fruition was just a little bit jarring for me. Like, I never personally got a sense of any kind of relationship blossoming from these two characters. So anyway, minor gripe aside. We also are shown that in Dewey's trailer, he has Tatum's ashes. So we'll call back to Tatum there. Sam calls Mindy and gets her to assemble everybody from the friend group at her and Chad's house, where Dewey shows up and informs Sam that he's decided to assist her in the investigation. We find out that Mindy and Chad are the niece and nephew of Randy Meeks, as their mother is Martha, who we last saw in Scream 3. Sam tells everyone that she's the daughter of Billy Loomis and that she suspects the killer is one of them. We also find out that Vince's murder is connected, as his mother was Stu Macher's sister, which leads Sam to point out that all of the attacks so far have been related to the original killers. Mindy deduces that the killer is a stab fanatic who is making what she refers to as a requel by introducing new main characters who are related to and also supported by the legacy characters, so it connects back to the first movie. As the group starts to point fingers at one another, they all end up on a consensus that it would make the most sense if the killer turned out to be Sam. Annoyed by the accusations, Sam takes off in a huff while leaving Richie behind. She then has another vision of Billy, who this time encourages her to go after the killer. First and foremost, I want to say how giddy I am that we get to hear the return of Dewey's theme, which we only ever really heard in Scream 2. Obviously, with the main body of the scene, there's a lot to like. I think this is like probably one of the funnier moments of the film, just with like the whole idea of the requel and going over everything and the characters accusing one another. I do think that the idea of the victims being connected to the franchise is a little sloppy because it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Like, just, it was kind of a throwaway line to find out that Vince is the nephew of Stu. But to me, this was kind of like the idea in Scream 2 where the killer was a copycat who was going after people who had the same names as the Woodsboro victims. And then in Scream 3 with the idea that they were only killing people based on the order in which they died in the script. Because both of those storylines got abandoned halfway through, and it's no different here, so this is again just like another red herring. But there was another inconsistency here because Wes does mention that his mother was a character in the Stab movies, but going by the conversation that the characters have, Stab 8 was the last movie to come out. And if we go back to Scream 4, Stab 7 was currently the last Stab movie to have come out there. So this creates a paradox in the fact that if it goes from Stab 7 to Stab 8, at what point did they make a Stab movie based on the events that happened in Scream 4, which would have been 2011 in the timeline of the franchise? It doesn't exist. So I'm starting to think that maybe these were purposefully put in there to just kind of like piss off the toxic fandom. We'll never know unless the directors and writers like actually just like come out and say it. And I don't know if anyone else found this awkward, but when they brought up the image of Billy on the TV, just the fact that it was a promotional photo from Scream, like, where did they get this photo from? It was taken at the house on the night that everyone was killed. Wes arrives home as Judy is on her way to pick up sushi for dinner. She tells him she'll be back soon and that he has enough time to take a shower. While on the road, the killer calls Judy and says that they want to turn themselves in, so they can tell her all about the 2 people they've killed. Judy points out that they've only killed 1 person so far, but the killer says it will be 2 by the time they're done with Wes. This causes Judy to turn the car around and speed back home, but she's unable to get through to Wes on the phone as he doesn't hear it ringing while he's in the shower. When Judy arrives, she runs up to the front porch but is cut off by Ghostface, who jumps out from behind a bush and stabs her to death on the front yard. Wes gets out of the shower, and after a long, suspenseful scene of opening pantry and fridge doors, Ghostface sneaks up behind him and slowly forces their knife into his neck, killing him on the spot. I want to say that this is probably my favorite scene of the movie, and in my non-spoiler review, I did say that this movie didn't really have any definable set pieces, and I stand by what I said. I don't really consider this a set piece. I think that this is more of an extended scene, but I think this part, more than any other, like really showcases the director's voice, because I do see like a lot of similarities with Ready or Not, and just like the way that they inserted the comedy into their movie without actually being over the top comedic while still retaining, you know, the ability to be suspenseful. I also liked Judy Hicks in the scene. Like, this was a big question mark for me going into the movie, because I wasn't sure how they were going to handle her. Like, she was such a silly and ridiculous character in Scream 4 that it didn't seem like she was really going to fit in with the darker aspects of this film. But I think that while in Scream 4 she came off as more of a caricature, like she's still able to retain her quirkiness here. It seemed like I was still watching the same person, but just like a little more serious. And another thing, I actually felt really bad for these characters. Like, not that I don't want to see people get killed off in a Scream movie, because obviously we need to have casualties, but I just felt like they did a really good job of just like connecting us with them, even if it was just like a short time that we got to see them. Also, just like in terms of the sheer brutality of these murders, like this is next level for this franchise. Like, I think like other than like the Olivia kill in Scream 4, like this, what we saw with the way that they killed them was pretty extreme, but I liked it. Sam arrives at the Hicks house, which is all taped off and swarming with police. As she tries to find out what happened, Gale Weathers arrives on the scene and begins talking to her about the deceased sheriff. Their conversation ends abruptly, however, when Gale notices Dewey and confronts him heatedly for having told her Ghostface was back in a text message. We find out that Dewey was the one who ended things with Gale this time after he couldn't be a supportive husband to her career, and it's also revealed that he was forced to retire from the police force. Sam calls Richie, who's now at their motel room watching YouTube reviews on Stab 8, where she tells him about the latest murders, but is distracted when she sees that the deputy who was assigned to watch over Tara is now at the crime scene instead. Sam jumps in her car to race to the hospital, but Dewey comes along with her, leaving Gale behind to broadcast her report. I wasn't sure how they were going to handle Gale and Dewey in this movie, just given their tumultuous history and Courtney and David's real-life divorce, but I like that it was done tastefully and also like not in the same way as they've done before. Like, they made Dewey the one who left Gale, which just gives him a lot more layers of complexity, but mostly it was able to like hit all the right emotions without feeling in any way contrived. And I think that, you know, they successfully navigated around that, and I liked that. I think like so far, I think just in terms of how they brought the legacy characters back into the fold, they did a phenomenal job in this movie. Going back to Richie and just seeing him in the motel room and like eating pizza and watching YouTube videos, I will say like this is just more evidence just showing his true colors as we, you know, start to see the layers peel back and just know that like, okay, maybe he is a little bit more into the Stab movies than he first let on. Also, I would be remiss to not mention the Easter eggs here that everyone and their grandmother already knows about, but just in case you don't, I will tell you, because we do see on the YouTube screen that there is an up next video link for an interview with Kirby Reed and her survivor story. So we now know, we have concrete proof that Kirby did survive Scream 4. She's not in this movie, but whether she comes back for a sequel is yet to be determined. And then we also have another video that possibly alludes to Stu surviving. However, I don't think that that's likely. It was more of like a fan fiction, or like, what if Stu survived? So I think, you know, they're just trying to appease every part of the fan base in that way. Obviously with the Kirby thing, like it's neither here nor there for me. Like, I do love Kirby as a character, mostly because of Hayden Panettiere, and I would love to see her come back to the franchise if they can make it work, but it wasn't something I necessarily needed out of this movie. So, you know, I'm glad it's there. You know, it makes people happy. So we're good. Back at the hospital, Tara has been left alone when the power goes out on the floor. She manages to pull herself out of bed and into a wheelchair, but finds a police officer whose throat has just been slashed, bleeding out on the floor. She goes to hide in one of the rooms to use a phone, but is surprised by Richie, who said that Sam called him to come check on her. Suddenly, Ghostface sneaks up behind him and slashes his arm, before knocking him out as Tara tries to get away in the wheelchair. As Sam calls Richie's phone again, Ghostface activates the voice changer underneath the mask and answers the call. They tell Sam that she has a choice to let either Tara or Richie live, but she stalls for time as her and Dewey arrive on the elevator. Dewey shoots Ghostface several times in the chest, subduing them, allowing him and Sam to quickly get Tara and Richie to safety. As they all run back to the elevator, Dewey decides that he needs to go back and make sure Ghostface is really dead by shooting them in the head. As he goes to do this, he gets distracted by Gale calling him on his cell, and Ghostface jumps up and stabs him with 2 blades, declaring it an honor as Dewey dies right then and there. I don't know about anyone else, but I was not surprised by Dewey's death. Every bone in my body leading up to the production of this film and everything told me that someone was gonna die, and I always thought it was gonna be him just because he is the heart of that group of the 3 characters, and his death would have the most impact going forward with just how it transformed the lives of Sidney and Gale. So I think that things were pretty telegraphed that he was gonna die in this one. But on another level, it was kind of spoiled for me a few days before the movie came out, because when they released the score for the movie, one of the tracks was titled Sacrifice, and it had the Dewey theme playing in it, which, I mean, why would you title a track Sacrifice knowing that that piece of music was in there? In terms of how his death affected me, I have said in the past that if you're going to kill off a character, make it serve a purpose in the grand scheme of things, rather than just being for shock value, which is mostly what I think of the Randy Scream 2 death. And here, it wasn't a shock to me, obviously, but I think that it did serve a greater purpose going into the 3rd act of the movie with Gale and Sidney. I just wish that he didn't die because he was being so careless. That seemed out of character for Dewey. If he was gonna get stabbed by the killer, it should have just been the killer overpowering him. And another thing I feel like I need to mention, because I've seen a lot of criticism about this, is the fact that people don't buy that Amber, because we know that it's Amber under the mask in this scene, was able to kill Dewey because she's a small female. And I mean, this is nothing new for the franchise. We've had Mrs. Loomis, we've had Jill. I've come to a point where I'm able to suspend disbelief. I know that this 6-foot-tall Ghostface, might be a teeny tiny little person underneath, but that doesn't change the fact that it's Ghostface. It's almost once you put on the costume, you get these superpowers. Not actually, but that's kind of the idea of it. You become this horror icon. So the fact that Amber did it, I mean, whomever it was, it is what it was. It's not about who did it, it's about how it was done and how it affects the characters moving forward. Also, another Easter egg that was shown in the scene when we first check in with Tara and she's watching TV, she's actually watching Dawson's Creek, which is a show that was created by Kevin Williamson. And the episode that they're watching, called The Scare, which was also written by Kevin, featured Scott Foley in a guest role. And if that name sounds familiar, it's because Scott Foley played Roman Bridger in Scream 3. So we do get to see him on screen in this movie as well. Gale arrives at the hospital the next morning and breaks down as she watches the coroner take Dewey's body away. Sam tries to comfort her by letting her know that his death wasn't in vain, but Gale is mostly unresponsive. Sidney arrives right after, where she explains that she came as soon as she heard, and the 2 old frenemies embrace in a hug. Meanwhile, Sam makes amends with Tara and promises that she's never going to leave her again, and the 2 sisters decide to leave Woodsboro, as it's the one thing nobody ever does in these situations. On their way out with Richie, Sidney confronts Sam and tells her that she knows that she's Billy Loomis's daughter and wants to talk with her. Sam just wants to run, but Sidney and Gale try to convince her to stay and help them kill Ghostface. She refuses to accept that this is part of her life and leaves with Richie and Tara, while Sidney, who doesn't try to stop her, reveals to Gale that she put a tracker on Sam's car. So this is a part of the movie, I mean, I don't get overly emotional when I watch things, but I got a little misty at this part just because I think that the evolution of Sidney and Gale's relationship is it's such a complex thing throughout these movies. I mean, the first 2 Scream movies, when they meet each other, Sidney punches Gale in the face. Scream 3, they're kind of unsure, how do we proceed? There's this awkward hug moment where they finally do come together. And in Scream 4, they share this hug, but it seems it's more so coming from Sidney's side, as there's this dark cloud of jealousy looming looming over Gale because of Sidney's success. And then just the fact that Dewey comes in right behind her, and Sidney's response to seeing Dewey is so much more positive than when she saw Gale. So this might be like the first time in the franchise where like these two characters genuinely come together and hug it out, and it feels like the raw emotion of it all. And that like really tugged at my heartstrings. And again, like these two characters are by no means close to one another, but just the fact that over this tragedy of, you know, someone that they both really care about brings them together. And that's kind of like how I love where the rest of the movie goes with Sidney and Gale. But then we also have the other like big relationship in this movie, which is of course Sam and Tara. And we get to see like a lot more of that. Because I do think that, you know, other than the legacy characters, Sam and Tara's relationship as sisters is like the most important part of this movie. Even despite the awkward monologue earlier on, I think that like the bond of these two sisters, like the chemistry that they share, like really shines through in this part of the movie. So just like going into the finale, like you feel the stakes for not only the legacy characters, but these sisters as well. And I like the fact that, you know, they have the good sense to get the hell out of Dodge, even though like they don't know that they're traveling with the enemy. But I mean, in any other circumstance, that might be the right thing to do. But apparently Sidney doesn't agree with that because she wants to take the fight to the killers, which I love that about Sidney. I don't think that Sam was there yet, but it also kind of shows Sidney's maturity that she was able to recognize that in Sam and then kind of like go about it in a more sneaky way by putting the tracker on the car. So overall, I'm really impressed with not only like the new characters and the legacy characters separately, but just like with how well they're integrated together into this story. On the car ride out of town, Tara realizes that she's lost her inhaler and can't make the trip to Modesto without it. Richie refuses to go back to the murder hospital, but Tara suggests they stop at Amber's house along the way as she has her spare inhaler. Meanwhile, the friends are throwing a party at Amber's house to commemorate Wes, with most of the high school also in attendance. Mindy sends Amber to the basement to get more beer, but follows her down there to chastise her for breaking a cardinal horror movie rule. Upstairs, Liv suggests that she and Chad have sex, but he declines her invitation on the grounds that he isn't 100% certain that she isn't the killer. This offends Liv, causing her to run out of the party. I never really thought, at least at this point in the movie, that Tara could be the killer or one of the killers, even though they do kind of lay the groundwork that you might question her or wonder like if she's lured them to the house into a trap. But I think if they had revealed Tara to be the killer, it might have just felt too much like Jill 2.0. But we also get reintroduced to all the other characters here, which I mean, I will admit, you know, we kind of did leave them for quite a while here. I don't think we've seen them since the scene at the Meeks house, but you know, it would have been nice if there were more scenes leading up to this. Like, you know, in Scream 1, we got the video store scene with Billy and Stu and Randy. So just like, you know, have these peripheral characters all get together in a scene before the party just to let us know that they're still in the movie. But with that in mind, I'm gonna say that the twins are my favorite characters in the movie. I think that just their chemistry with each other and all the other characters around them is just so good. Like with Chad, he turned out to be like so different than what you'd expect with just like this jock type character. And Mindy, who is pretty much the comic relief here. And, you know, I always love the comic relief characters. I think Randy would be proud. But also the way that Jasmine Savoy and Mason Gooding play these characters, I'm really excited to see them come back in the next movie. I'm glad they survived, as they should have. As Sidney and Gale follow Sam, Gale proclaims that none of this would be happening if she hadn't written that book about Sidney's mother and blames herself. Sidney assures her that it was Billy Loomis who started it and states that her and Gale are going to finish it together. Back at the party, Mindy is watching the first stab, while Chad gets frustrated that Liv won't return his texts and goes outside looking for her. He receives a notification on his phone that Liv has accepted his GPS tracker request, and he sees that she's nearby. As Chad gets closer to the signal and still can't see her, he decides it's too dangerous and turns around to go back to the party. Ghostface, of course, has snuck up behind Chad and stabs him in the leg, sending him running off to the side of the house where he hides behind a shed. He ditches his phone to draw the GPS signal away from him, but as he tries to make a run for it back to the house, Ghostface bursts out of the shed and catches up with him to stab him several more times. Just then, Richie, Sam, and Tara pull up in their car, but fail to notice either Chad or Ghostface and all go inside the house. Amber abruptly ends the party, sending everyone home, while she and Tara, who's walking around on crutches, go searching for the spare inhaler. Richie finds Mindy, who is still watching Stab, and asks her if she'll come downstairs to get more beer with him. She refuses, but he tells him he was right to ask, and he disappears into the basement after saying he'll be right back. Liv mysteriously returns to the house, where she starts acting looking suspicious towards Mindy before making idle threats to her and disappearing once again. Sidney, who's still on the road with Gale, notices the tracker on Sam's car is stopped and recognizes the address. She calls Sam to tell her she's been lured into a trap, as it's revealed that Amber's house is also Stu Macher's house from the original. Okay, I just want to address this one thing, which I mean, maybe there's some way to see around it, but I don't like how Sidney gives all the credit to Billy Loomis for having started everything. I mean, I'm fine with him getting the credit, but the fact remains that like Roman Bridger was actually the one who started everything. So again, I don't know if that was intentionally put in there to just like irk some of the fan base like myself, but I could see, you know, maybe an explanation around that is that Billy Loomis was the one that started the Ghostface persona. But I don't know, maybe tell me what your thoughts are on this. I will say that I really love that we're getting new scenes of stab. Like in Scream 4, they just showed the same scene from Scream 2 over again. So it was nice that they recreated the rules scene, I guess it was. But I would have absolutely loved, and I feel like this is a missed opportunity, if they had brought Parker Posey back to film a scene as Gale Weathers. Because we've never seen her playing Gale Weathers. We've just seen her like playing Gale Weathers off of Gale Weathers' Courtney Cox. But even the fact that we did get any new scene of stab, like that's incredible. I loved that. In terms of the GPS stuff, I think that like the beginning with the smart home technology, I don't think that that's gonna age particularly well. I think it was like definitely like a good setup. You know, we've seen stuff like this before. I mean, I guess, you know, going back to Alien. But I think my biggest gripe here is that we didn't really get much of a chase scene. Like if there was a chase scene in the movie, this is it. But, you know, I'm missing like the days of like Scream 2, like Gale chase scene, or even like Sidney in Scream 3 running through the Stab 3 set. It's been like since the year 2000 that we've gotten a really good chase scene. So that is something I hope that we really do see when Scream 6 comes along. I will say that it's pretty obvious at this point who the killers are, and I'll get more into that when I start talking about the killers in the next part. But for me, like the obviousness of them doesn't bother me that much. Like it did on my first viewing, but I've seen it 3 times now and I understand the movie a lot better. So with things like that, I feel that the seeds were planted earlier on to just like cognitively allow us to know that this is where the story was going. So the fact that it seemed obvious, that's not really the screenplay's fault for, you know, maybe picking the wrong people to be the killer, but it's more so like a testament to the screenplay that they were able to put these clues in there that like subconsciously we would have figured it out by the end. Also the house reveal, and this is something that, I mean, it has nothing to do with the movie or anything within the mechanics of the movie, but this was something that was spoiled to us a long time ago, like over a year ago, because during production they showed us the Macher House. We knew that we were going to the Macher House, and I feel that the way that it was framed in the movie where Sidney calls Sam and she picks up the phone and realizes that she's in the original house and we pan out to see it, that would have been so much more effective had we not known about it. So Paramount, anyone, like if you're watching, like stop putting spoilers in your marketing, in your trailers, in your social media for anyone involved. Like these are things that would have been amazing if we had found out in the body of the movie rather than knowing about them going into it. Ghostface creeps up on Mindy, who's still watching the movie from the couch, and stabs her in the shoulder. Sam overhears the altercation and runs into the room to save her by throwing a lamp at Ghostface, which causes them to run off. As she tends to Mindy's wound, Amber enters the room with Tara and accuses Sam of the attack. Richie and Liv also return separately, where everyone begins to suspect Liv as her hands are covered in blood. However, she claims that it's Chad's blood as she found him outside and swears that she isn't the killer. Just then, Amber confesses that she's the killer and pulls out a gun, shooting Liv in the head. Amber tries to shoot at Sam as well, but is stopped by Tara, giving Sam and Richie enough time to run down to the basement. Sam tries to go back for Tara, but Richie stops her and says that he thinks Tara is the second killer, seeing as how she was the one who brought them there. Sam begins to distrust Richie, stating that she knows her sister a lot better than him, before running back upstairs. She finds Tara tied and gagged in one of the closets, but hesitates as she goes to cut her loose, as she wonders whether or not Richie was right. Now, I've seen a lot of opinions online that say that the end of the movie wasn't very good, or like the pace of the end of the movie isn't good. And I don't understand that. I think that the pace significantly improves here. I do get a lot of shades of Scream 4 with the party house at the end and all the characters like coming and going. But I think the use of red herrings is done a lot more successfully here, except for maybe Liv, because I thought that it was pretty obvious that she was just kind of there to be goofy and ridiculous. But in terms of Liv, I do want to say that I feel like her greater purpose in the movie, because she did feel like a bit of a throwaway character, is that she served to kind of like be this gender swap role. And we saw that with like the characters earlier, specifically Wes and Chad, where their death scene or attack scene is primarily something that we would see with a female character, you know, like in the shower, or a chase scene with a female character. And normally it's a male character who like gets shot in the head, or at least like what we've seen in the previous Scream movies. So for her to get that fate, while the other male characters got the fate that was usually reserved for a female character, kind of all speaks to the level of how this movie is able to subvert your expectations. You know, there's things are maybe not as surprising in terms of like what happens, but how they happen. That's where I feel like this movie really succeeds. Also, what happened with Mindy? They just kind of forgot about her. I mean, not that I needed her to be there throughout the climax of the movie, but you know, maybe there could have been like a Neil Prescott thing where she comes jumping out of the closet at one point. Sidney and Gale arrive at the house and arm themselves with guns, which sends Amber running out the front door, feigning a stab wound. They rightfully guess it to be a trap, which causes Amber to shoot Gale in the ribs. Amber goes running back into the house, and at Gale's insistence, Sidney goes in after her rather than taking Gale to the hospital. Sidney makes her presence known by announcing that anyone hiding has 5 seconds to show themselves before she starts shooting bullets into doors. Ghostface calls her cell as she heads upstairs, but after mocking them for being the most derivative killer of them all, she hangs up and shoots through the last bedroom door, which ends up hitting Richie in the leg. After arguing with him for not coming out earlier, Sidney is attacked by Ghostface from the side, where the two fall backwards over the upper level banister. As Sidney and Ghostface try to get the gun first, Richie hobbles down the stairs to help her, but it's Sam who comes out of nowhere and grabs it. As Richie gets to the bottom of the stairs, he stabs Sam in the gut and takes the gun from her, revealing himself to be the second killer. He also pulls Tara's inhaler out of his pocket to show to Sam, implying that he had hidden it in order to lure the sisters to the house. The Ghostface who is scuffling with Sidney unmasks themselves, revealing that it was still just Amber, who had put the costume on again after running back into the house. I don't know if this was done intentionally, because I mean, historically through Scream 1, 2, 3, and 4, Gale makes it to the finale and then is like taken out right beforehand. And it was so abrupt, like how that happened here, that I'm not sure if it was done as a joke, but I do like the fact that, you know, she is brought back in later on. She is part of the main body of the action that takes place in the kitchen. Again, like both Gale and especially Sidney, I feel that, you know, they don't get a lot of screen time in this movie, but for me, it's not about the quantity of screen time, it's about the quality of screen time. And every moment that Sidney is on screen here, she's just killing it. I mean, just the fact that she's gone to a point where she's mocking the killer openly and in a way that it's just like, I'm bored with this, and just hangs up. Like, she's prepared for this. This all to me just feels like when she's done this, she's ready to go home and have dinner on the table by 6 o'clock for the rest of the family. She's so competent as a final girl, and not that I needed any more convincing after like the first 4 Scream movies, but this really should solidify her as the best final girl ever. In terms of the misdirection of the killer, just like the second killer, because Amber went back into her Ghostface costume. That wasn't really a surprise to me, but I really do appreciate Jack Quaid's performance, and just like right up to the very last minute that he's still playing this role of the boyfriend. I mean, I saw right through it, but just as a fact that like Richie as a person is putting on this performance for Sam and everyone else around him, I appreciate that. That is kind of shades of Billy. And I know that these killers are kind of being dragged through the mud, and I know they're not great killers, and I'll get more into that in a second here, but I just wanted to say that the performances from both of them, I still really enjoy them. Amber brings Gale in from outside, where they join Richie in the kitchen with Sidney and Sam, as he explains that their motive was to make a proper stab reboot, as they thought the last movie sucked balls. Amber reveals they plan on framing Sam as she's the illegitimate daughter of Billy Loomis, whose motive would have been to murder Sidney for killing her father. Sidney tries to grab a knife, but Amber stabs her and leaves the kitchen to get Tara so they can start staging the bodies. However, Sam reveals that she had untied Tara earlier, who surprises Amber in the hallway and starts beating her with her crutches. Richie is momentarily distracted, which allows Sam to gain the upper hand and get away. Amber knocks out Tara and goes back to the kitchen, where Sidney and Gale tag team against her. After getting a bottle of liquor smashed over her head, Amber is sent flying into an open flame on the stovetop, which ignites her entire body in flames until she collapses on the floor. Meanwhile, Richie follows Sam's blood trail up the stairs, where she jumps out from behind a door and attacks him. The two fall down the stairs, where Richie once again gains the upper hand when he grabs a hold of the gun. However, after seeing another vision of Billy, who directs her to a knife hidden under a curtain, she violently stabs Richie over and over again before finishing him off with a throat slit. As Sidney and Gale join her in the foyer, Sam takes a gun and shoots 3 bullets into Richie, ensuring his death. Just then, a crispy fried Amber comes flying out of the kitchen, charging at them, only to get shot in the side of the head by Tara, who had regained consciousness and gotten a hold of one of the other guns. With both killers now dead, the two sisters embrace in a hug. Okay, so in terms of the motive of the killers, I was kind of on the fence. I feel like I know a little bit better now, like what side of it I fall on. And I actually really like the fact that this is a toxic fandom. You know, I think initially, like, what I had expected or wanted was something more personal, kind of like how in Scream 1, the backstory was all about Maureen Prescott's murder. Whereas like here, I thought that, you know, it might have been something that happened to Sam in the past and that we would have seen that through her relationship with the younger characters back when she was a teenager. So initially, like, I was kind of upset that, you know, this is what the motive was and these are who the killers were. But the more I've seen the movie now, I kind of know that, like, we're supposed to think that these are shitty killers. Like, that's the whole point of them. They're clumsy. They're not good at what they're doing. Like, they're definitely the most incompetent. They're so ill prepared for this. And even when you really think about it, like, they're trying to frame Sam, but she was with Richie in Modesto at the time of Tara's attack. By the end of the movie, it was never supposed to be about how threatening or menacing the killers were, but rather like how strong the heroines were. We really see that in the way that they fight back, because Amber and Richie probably receive like the most brutal deaths of any of the killers in the franchise. So I think maybe that's just like how the fandom is. Like, we put a lot of emphasis on who the killer is rather than who the hero of the story is. I should point out that Amber, who's played by Mikey Madison, was also in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, who receives like the exact same death scene in that movie. If you go watch it, she's one of the Manson cult girls and she's also lit on fire, and it's spectacular in that movie as well. So maybe that was like kind of a reference to that, like having the same actress come and play it. But another thing that I noticed, that her like jumping out of the kitchen at the end all charred, is actually something that was taken out of the abandoned Scream 3 script, because originally Angelina, who had a TV thrown on her head like Stu as well, got up at the last minute and charged at them with a knife, all like burnt, until Sidney shot her in the head. So I like to think that they were still referencing Scream 3 with that. I don't know if it's my favorite finale of all of the movies, but I for what it is, I still really enjoy it. If I had one little criticism here, it's just that I thought that the editing was a little choppy in the scene in the kitchen where you had Sidney and Gale fighting with Amber, just because it was quick cut edits and you have 3 female characters who all have dark hair and are wearing dark clothing. So it's just a little hard to determine like exactly what was going on, but like really that's such a minor gripe out of everything here that I'm not gonna let it taint the way that I look at the end scene here, because I think it's brilliant. With police and paramedics on the scene, Mindy is carried out of the house on a stretcher, where she sees that her brother Chad has also survived and is having his wounds tended to in an ambulance. Sam thanks Sidney and Gale for helping her and asks if she's ever going to be okay, to which Sidney replies, eventually. Gale decides that she won't be writing a book about these murders, as she wants Amber and Richie to die in anonymity, and instead tells Sidney that she plans on writing a book about Dewey. Sam catches one last glimpse of Billy in a windshield reflection before leaving in an ambulance with Tara, promising to hold her hand all the way to the hospital. Again, with the twins, I really loved that they both survived. I was pretty confident that Mindy would, but you know, seeing Chad on the stretcher there, kind of like the ending of Scream with Dewey, that kind of like melted my heart a bit. Like I wasn't expecting it, so I'm happy. I'm happy that they'll be back in the next movie, hopefully. Again, with the legacy characters, they all served a purpose. Sidney and Gale left this movie as completely different people that were transformed from their experience as they were from when they entered it. Gale achieved more growth and development, evidenced by the fact that, you know, she's not going to write about the killers anymore and instead write a book about Dewey. movie. And Sidney has gone from a character who's needed to be helped to a character that is helping other people. So it's brilliant. It's like full circle for them. I hope this is the last we see of any like Billy hallucinations or any like past killer hallucinations. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. It was fan service, and I'm sure it definitely worked in that regard. For all of its expository heaviness, I feel that the relationship between the sisters was like the greatest strength of this movie, just in terms of where it took their characters from the start to the finish, which, you know, even in terms of some of the earlier sequels, like at the end of Scream 2, where Sidney just kind of like walks off after all of her friends have been killed, it kind of leaves a little bit to be desired, whereas this actually felt like a complete movie. Best of all, I have no idea where they're gonna go with the story from here, and that is exactly how every Scream movie should end. I want to thank my Patreon supporter, Christina. If you guys want to check out some more Scream-related content, you can click on either one of these playlists. Until next time, I've been Zach Cherry, and I'll be right back.